Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Underground Comic Review. My name is Sean, and today I will be reviewing Snarf number 8. Snarf number 8 was published by Kitchen Sink Enterprises in 1978 and had only one printing of 10,000 copies. The front cover is by J. Pound, and I have to say I like its simplicity. And the blue fade I find to be nice and welcoming. The cover also features J. Pound's recurring character, Flip the Bird. The inside cover features two different stories by separate creators. The first is by Kim Deitch telling, in his own words, an old joke and a true story. The second is a short story about money and death by Art Spiegelman and Francis Mooley, who would go on to create Raw, a comic book that I would love to get my hands on. The first story is called The Nightmares of Little Lulu by H. Cruz, which is a spoof of the old comic strip TV show and shows that things might not have been so perfect after all. It gets quite dark and shows that she had quite a traumatic childhood, including her parents being drug peddlers and forcing Lulu to be an addict, but then Chubby saves the day when he gets called to star in a gritty detective comic, and that Lulu can come along if she wants, leaving her miserable childhood behind only to be tormented by nightmares. The next story is by Trina Robbins and is about a different Lulu, and it's called Lulu Goes to Paris, which is about a World War II French resistance operative who is undercover as a drug-dealing Nazi sympathizer. She starts an affair with a soldier to gain information. She soon uncovers that the Nazis are looking for a sacred spear that will give whoever wields it power over the world. Once hearing the plan, she sets out to foil the Nazi scheme, which she accomplishes in an entertaining way. Up next we have a Steve Styles one-pager called Joseph Stalin Tells Me What to Draw, which is hard to explain but nonetheless very funny. Now for the next story, we're back to occupied Paris for Sharon Rudolph's The Dying Swan, which is about an aging ballerina named Alexandria Levantia, who is thought to be one of the greatest despite her age. After a spirited performance one evening, she is asked to accompany a Nazi officer for the night, but she refuses for her hatred of the Nazi party and what they've done. The Nazi officer, now quite displeased, decides that he can't have her, so he'll have her protege Odette. Odette, unfortunately for Andrea's sake, agrees to go with him back to Berlin. After Alexandria discovers this, she sets out in a plan to get revenge on the officer and gain back Odette by any means necessary. This is one of my favorite pieces in this issue and should be mentioned how beautiful the story is and how wonderfully it's told. After that, we have a quaint one-pager by Justin Green called Zen Time, and is about a monk who misheard his master and it results in a devastating way. Next is another one-pager by Steve Styles called Piece of the Action, which is really hard to explain, but I can tell you it involves two robots in a post-apocalyptic world. Now we have a story by Joel Beck called Love Story, which is about two anthropomorphic pigs who fall in love, but things work out horribly, and they just get worse and darker from there, with things like prostitution and lynching innocents being some of the worst. But somehow in the end, things work out in an almost warm, fuzzy, feel-good way. Back for another one-pager, Steve Styles hits us with Livestock Funnies, a story about a farm kid who has to pull an old Yeller on his pet pigs, but things go horribly wrong when he screws up the shot multiple times. Up next is Hippos by George Erling, where Hippo goes to a barn cell. Not much else to say. Alrighty, now we have Doug Hansen's 10-Speed Tommy, and this story's great. In the story, Benjamin Dog and 10-Speed Tommy show you why it's important to obey the speed limit, and they do it in a hilarious way. Now for the last Steve Styles one-pager that this issue has to offer. It's called It's the Pits, where Steve himself makes a counterfeit Active Comics #1 because he's upset with the rising back-issue comic prices, and he proceeds to burn it at a comic convention, only to find himself mobbed by crazy fans. The last story we have here is called Keep 'Em Flying, and is by Kim Deitch, and it continues on to the back cover. In the story, Kim gets hypnotized, and his mind is transported into itself. He finds himself standing face-to-face with one of his characters, Waldo. Waldo and Kim then decide to travel the universe, but Waldo secretly takes him to his home world to be eaten by the world itself. In the end, though, you find out that Kim isn't hypnotized at all, and in fact, he just fell asleep while the hypnotist was doing his thing. Well, that wraps it up for Snarf number 8, and I have to say it's fantastic, and I couldn't recommend it more. It's a shining example of what underground comics could and should be, with compelling storytelling like in The Dying Swan, some great art, some interesting art, and some good laughs along the way too, like in What Joseph Stalin Tells Me What to Draw. Well, like I said, it's fantastic, and check it out if you can. Pick it up, definitely pick it up if you're looking for something like this. Well, that's another episode of Underground Comic Review. My name's Sean. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and have a good one.